Okay, everyone, we're back. I tried to do this the first time and something happened, and I'm not really sure what it was this morning. So we had a little bit of a glitch, but we're here now. Thank you all for your patience. Welcome to Resistance Live for the 27th of August, 2019. Couple things I just want to make you all aware of. Once again, Haven closes on Friday. We've got a really good group of people coming together for this program already. You can join us by going to GaiaLeadershipProject.com/Haven. In addition to that, just wanted to let you all know that we are crafting a few extra little bonuses for Patreon subscribers this fall. So those will, we're reworking the tiers on Patreon right now. Bonus videos will still be for those of you at $10 and up, but we're going to add a couple of little extra bonuses for other tiers for those of you who are in them. So you'll have to kind of wait and see what those are, but they're coming. All right. Gonna just jump right in today to kind of what we're seeing here, because there's been a lot of discussion in the last 24 hours about a whole series of issues that are significant. So couple things I just want to mention. Rachel did a huge block last night on what's happening at the Federal Election Commission. And I want to encourage all of you who have not yet seen it to go watch that, because what's happening at the FEC is fundamentally the FEC, as with many administrative offices at this point, has been gutted. And one of the things that's of profound concern about this at this point is the following. If there is not a quorum at the Federal Election Commission, meaning enough people in the room who are on the commission to vote, the Federal Election Commission cannot conduct business. And so one of the things that's of serious concern here with regard to what's happening at the FEC is that there will not be a fundamental degree of accessibility in terms of what the FEC is charged to do without a quorum existing. And what that means is basically that the FEC can't act. Of course, the FEC, as you know, the Federal Election Commission governs all sorts of things. Campaign finance, the security of our elections, they have a partial responsibility for. There is an enormous amount of work that the FEC needs to do that it may not fundamentally be able to do going forward unless we get new commissioners placed on the FEC. So that's something that we all need to kind of be aware of. There was an interview last night with the chair of the Federal Election Commission on Rachel's broadcast. And once again, really do want to encourage those of you who maybe didn't see it to watch it. There's plenty to be worried about right now in terms of election security, but that one in particular is significant. And it is partially because basically they are not allowed to function without a certain number of commissioners on the commission itself, and they don't have them now. The likelihood that we're going to be able to do anything about that, I hate to come back to this longstanding mantra, but it's fundamentally unlikely, impossible at this stage of the game that any of this will change until Trump is removed from office. All right. One other thing that I just wanted to mention here with regard to the particular issue of getting out the vote, which we spent a lot of time talking about yesterday and which feels particularly significant today for purposes of talking about getting ready for 2020. So Obama's foundation announced yesterday that they are doing a free redistricting training to people on the issue of gerrymandering. You can go to President Obama's Twitter feed. The link is there. You can sign up. They're going to be rolling this out in major cities across the country as a form of training for everyone who's interested in working on redistricting efforts. My view at this point is that we all need to participate in something like this to get ready for 2020. Maybe your primary issue is not going to be redistricting. Maybe it's just going to be registering people to vote. But nonetheless, getting involved for 2020 right now is really important. One of the things that I just want to mention, by the way, on this front, is that I have had a couple of conversations in the last couple of days about the issue of the 2020 vote. And, one of the things that I think is becoming really apparent to any activist who's worked on any issue is that as it appears that Pelosi is not going to do anything, as it appears that she is not moving forward at this moment in time to really push on impeachment, 2020 is very quickly becoming, it appears, the only way that we're going to get President Trump out of office. So one of the things that means is that our 2020 organizing at this point has to be a part of whatever primary issue we're working on. The focus on immigration also has to include a 2020 component. The focus on the environment also has to include a 2020 component. Every aspect of what we're doing at this stage of the game needs to include a 2020 component. So I just want to encourage everyone. I know we've talked about this a lot this week, but it's really important that we continue to discuss it. We need to be organizing for 2020. And, everybody that I'm talking to right now is talking about 2020 as basically like do or die for American democracy. So I hate to be kind of tragic about it, but it does feel as though it's profoundly important at this point that we work toward it in every way that we possibly can. All right. Another quick note, the issue of the new Flores regs, which I have tweeted about a fair amount concerning the detention camps, is being litigated in court. Last night, the pleading that was filed, by quite a number of the state attorneys general, what did become available publicly. What is contained in the regs is frightening. And, I had gotten some inside information on this already, but let me just say this. They are talking about indefinite and prolonged detention of children in unsanitary and unsafe conditions with no oversight and no regulation. We are lucky that there are state attorneys general who actually care about this enough to challenge it in court. I will add that new court filing, everything that I am hearing from people who have actually read the regs, which are summarized in part in the court filing, is that the regs are astonishingly awful. I, in fact, know lawyers who have been advised by their supervisors not to read the new regs because they are so upsetting that it's traumatic to even read what this government is planning to do in the absence of the current Flores settlement inside these concentration camps. So once again, we do have actions being taken in state court that are important. We also learned this morning that Tish James is challenging the public charge component of the Trump immigration policy, meaning this issue that if you have taken any form of public assistance, you are not eligible for a green card. That is also now being challenged in court. So, we're watching the state attorneys general pick up the ball here and run with it. And again, they need our support. They need our retweets. They need our public vocal advocacy for their positions. And again, ones to watch. The one thing I will say about this, however, which I have grave concern about, and the lawyers that I have spoken to also have grave concern about, is this. It is the fact that we can't guarantee any longer that this administration, even if a ruling goes against them, plan to follow the law. There are indications right now that some of these regulations are already being implemented, notwithstanding the fact that they are being challenged in court. So once again, 2020, public advocacy, all of our phone calls and protesting and volunteer work and everything else that goes along with that has to be a continuous component. I'll say one thing about that. I know that a lot of you have a lot of frustration about the idea that this is all we can do, quote unquote. Again, I'm going to remind you all, the problem right now is that until he is removed from office, literally nothing about this can change. And so it's either got to be impeachment, the 25th Amendment, or 2020. I know it's frustrating. I know it's profoundly frustrating, but literally they are disregarding every aspect of the ordinary forms of civil disobedience and resistance in favor of just doing what they want. And that's the problem with insane people and fascists having power. So we have to keep going. I'm sorry that it sounds repetitive, but that's really the only solution at this point, is to continue trying to make an impact in every way that we can in organizing for 2020. All right. There's a hearing underway this morning concerning Jeffrey Epstein with regard to the criminal prosecutions against him and whether or not those and civil matters, by the way, as well. Where victims are being given an opportunity to speak in court. This relates to the fact that Jeffrey Epstein is now dead and whether or not the civil litigations can continue. There will be victim impact statements. There are victim impact statements being made right now in court from his victims. You can expect a fair amount of reporting on that today. I do expect the civil actions are going to be allowed to continue against his estate, notwithstanding the trust that we talked about last week. There will be some additional means by which I expect that will proceed. Again, they may have to break the trust to get recovery, but the case itself will likely be allowed to proceed. And on another front of sexual assault, unfortunately, Harvey Weinstein was indicted on 2 new counts yesterday of rape. Annabella Sciorra, the actress, is the victim, and she's expected to testify. The grand jury indicted him, and he pled not guilty yesterday. So again, ongoing actions there to keep an eye on. One of you asked whether or not the next G7 will be held at Mar-a-Lago. The answer to this is no. I just want you all to be aware. I know there's been a lot of a kerfuffle about this in the last 24 hours because the president is selling Mar-a-Lago or the Trump Doral for the next G7. It's not going to happen. I can't imagine, frankly, that the G6 minus Trump is going to be at all willing to violate the emoluments clause and pay all this money to this president by showing up there. So don't assume that the fact that the president is advertising it is necessarily what's going to happen there. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to mention, I had a request to talk a little bit about what happened with Bret Stephens yesterday. So Bret Stephens was called a bedbug yesterday on Twitter by a professor at a university. Bret Stephens, as you all know, is the conservative New York Times columnist who has written a lot about political correctness on campus. He then wrote an email to this person who had called him a bedbug with 9 likes and no retweets, and CC'd this university professor's provost, meaning his boss, with a complaint about this. Bret Stephens has rightfully been slammed all over Twitter last night and this morning for this particular comment, particularly by women, LGBTQ folks, people of color, for his absolute fragility and how many of us would prefer to be called a bedbug than everything else that we've been threatened with on Twitter, self included. I will just say that it is yet another indication that the New York Times doesn't have their shit together. There is a profound concern right now in the left-leaning journalistic community that the next round of people that Trump comes for will be journalists, in part because we're already seeing indications of this at both the northern and the southern border, where journalists are being detained by Customs and Border Protection and in certain instances not allowed into the country. So efforts to suppress the free press are predicted to increase very soon, and the media is going to have to be ready for it if they're not prepared to fight back against this particular, set of upcoming and ongoing assaults against the First Amendment. Chances are good that Trump will be successful at yet again doing everything that he's trying to do to destroy our democracy. So the Bret Stephens thing was quite funny from a bedbug standpoint. It gave everybody a lot of entertainment last night on Twitter. Do I think that it really is going to have a major impact at this moment in time on anything out there in the world? No, but I do think it's a red flag, basically, that many of the major mainstream media sources are not prepared for what's about to come. And I'm not alone in that critique, by the way. I have very serious concerns about what's happened in the reports that have come out this year in The Intercept, in other forms of media. Just a few days ago at the Canadian border, this journalist was detained and not allowed into the country because she is Canadian. I think there are indications that on that front, the suppression of the First Amendment is going to get far worse. So we need our journalists and our media to be prepared for that. And we need them to be ready to fight back. Okay. Last thing I want to say today, I just want to reiterate that if you have not yet found a way to participate in getting out the vote in your local area, you need to do it today. And again, I am of the opinion that 2020 is going to come down to a battle between Trump and probably Elizabeth Warren at this point. And the aim of the president in all of this is to get himself reelected through election interference. The only way that we defeat that with the state of this current government is by voting in such overwhelming numbers that the interference is not successful. I cannot overstate the gravity of what 2020 is going to bring for this country if the president gets reelected. I am at a point after, like I said earlier in the broadcast, some conversations that I had yesterday, where it just feels absolutely mandatory at this point that the focus on 2020 become primary in the minds of all of us and what we're doing. Yes, we should continue doing everything else, but I'm just going to say this, my sense, some of you have asked me about upcoming marches that are being planned. My sense at this point is that getting out the vote, getting new people registered to vote, getting people to the polls, getting organized for that is the most important place for us to put our energy right now. We have a year to save this democracy by getting people out to vote in numbers that have never been seen before in this country. And we need to get started on it today. All right, that's it for today. I know we've had problems with the stream. I apologize to all of you. Reminder, Registration for Haven closes Friday. GaiaLeadershipProject.com/Haven. We would love to see you in there for 28 days of relief and respite and calm and community and everything else that we have planned for you. And I look forward to talking to all of you tomorrow, hopefully with a much better feed. Thank you so much. Bye.